Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. As you can tell by my slightly more janky setup than usual, yes, I am back at yonder in-laws house in Oregon. I wasn't able to watch the live version of SmackDown this week because I was traveling, so in the interest of fairness, I watched the Hulu versions of both Raw and SmackDown. So just an early notice, there will be no official points given out for the week. There will be an unofficial winner, but I will still give you my opinions of Raw and SmackDown as I saw it. So here we go. Raw begins with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman opening things. They call back the footage from last week when Brock beat up a handcuffed Roman Reigns. Another very, very strong promo by Paul Heyman saying that Roman Reigns was raised to be a Samoan badass, but he was not raised to be a man. Very good line there. Out comes Roman Reigns to the crowd, fresh off of his suspension. Heyman said he wasn't going to be there tonight, but sure enough, he was. Lesnar does get the first shot in, but Reigns is able to capitalize with some steel chair shots to the back. He goes for a Superman punch off the steps, but Lesnar intercepts him with a suplex, hits him with the steel steps, then the steel chair a few more times, and then hits an F5 onto the steel steps. Oh, Reigns is in so much pain yet has time to flip back his hair, adjust the hair. He's got to look good. He's got to show the moneymaker to the cameras here. And that's pretty much how the segment ends. I thought it was an okay opener. Heyman's promo, very strong, and the beatdown was very convincing. Here's the thing. It's designed to build more babyface sympathy for Roman Reigns. Now, it certainly did show Brock as a killer, and it certainly shows Roman Reigns has an uphill battle ahead of him for WrestleMania. But did it garner like babyface sympathy? Did the crowd want to see him come back and fight? You know, here's the thing. I don't think we know from this sample just yet. I think the real proof of this will be if next week on the Go Home show, Reigns does come back and beats Lesnar's ass like for a little bit, for a sustained period of time, and ends up in that segment on top, and if the crowd is into it, then I will say that these last couple of weeks have worked to that end. But right now, based on the crowd reaction from this thing on Monday, I would say not really. We get Nia Jax versus Alexa Bliss's henchwoman, Mickie James. Mickie's working the leg for this match here while Alexa is at ringside cheering on Mickie here. Mickie goes to the top rope, but Nia catches her, picks her up with a military press into a Samoan drop to win the match. Bliss jumps her from behind right after the bell rings, but Nia scares her away. So again, more of Nia looking strong and Alexa cowering in fear. The moment Nia actually does get her hands on Alexa Bliss, whether it be next week in the Go Home or at WrestleMania itself, it will be a very big moment. As to who actually wins the championship match at Mania, I'm still kind of on the fence about it. I enjoyed the hype package for this week that ran counter to last week's thing with Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey. They show Triple H and Stephanie McMahon talking about their match at Mania with Rousey and Kurt, and I just love how just smarmy and full of themselves and heelish, especially Stephanie was in this hype package, showing their training regimen. I wasn't so interested in that. I was just more interested in the character stuff we saw from Triple H and Stephanie here. I also enjoyed the fact they show a little bit of the history that Triple H and Kurt have going all the way back to the year 2000. And so that was kind of a nice little continuity there to keep it connected. And yeah, I thought the hype package itself was very good. Based on what we saw here, I cannot wait until Stephanie finally gets hers at WrestleMania. We get some Miz TV, and the big story here was the apparent tension between The Miz and the Miztourage. Miz was berating Bo and Curtis for their inability to win matches and stuff, and then out come Seth Rollins and Finn Balor to stir the pot. Bo gets some mic time. He calls Miz a phony A-lister who can't fight. Finn Balor actually tricks him into repeating himself, and there's this tension here. The Miz runs down Mr. Perfect as he's ranting, and that pisses off Curtis. So now Miz and Bo and Curtis, I should say, and Seth and Finn have surrounded The Miz. There's actually a cool little moment here. You hear Seth Rollins' like heelish laugh he did back when he was in his first run as champion. I thought it was kind of cool to hear him do that laugh again, but it's a swerve. Turns out the Miztourage and the Miz were in cahoots all along. It was a setup to try and play Balor and Rollins. The Good Brothers, Anderson and Gallows, come in to pull the Miztourage away. They would have a match later on that was cut from the Hulu version. Then you've got Balor and Rollins kind of beating up the Miz a bit. Balor holds up the Intercontinental Championship. That's how the whole thing ends. And Balor and Rollins will have a match next week on Raw, a rematch of sorts. This segment to me accomplished a few different things that I thought were good. It tested the waters for a Miztourage breakoff from the Miz. Obviously, it's not happening now, but I think eventually it will happen. fun, and if it's done right, if it was done anything at all like this segment here on Miz TV, I think it will be a good step in the right direction. I think that, you know, especially Bo Dallas has thrived in this role. I've loved his work doing this as kind of the henchman thing. I've always loved his mannerisms and his ability on promo. So I think that him branching out, eventually breaking away from The Miz, would be a good step for him and for Curtis. Backstage, the tension between Sasha Banks and Bayley has reached a boiling point. Sasha is unapologetic for being the boss and thinking only of herself, even at the expense of her friendship with Bayley. Bayley says that you know that you can't beat me. Sasha says, I'm a 4-time Raw Women's Champion, and Bayley says, well, how long did you hold on to that belt? That's when they fight. Bayley gets thrown into the lockers, they fight back and forth, and now we're finally having this like physical blow-off between these two. It's great to see Sasha now kind of like firmly in the heel position. I think she's a much better heel than a face. Apparently, I read that Bayley was supposed to be the heel going into this once they actually blew up, but I don't think that, I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying it won't work, but I'm very curious to see what a heel Bayley would be like. If not happening now, I'm open to seeing it down the line, but I'm curious to see how they would pull that off. We get more of the continuing action between Braun Strowman and The Bar, the Raw Tag Champs. Strowman tells them if that Sheamus can beat him tonight, he will reveal who his partner is for WrestleMania. So he and Sheamus have a match, and I think you know what goes next here. Braun Strowman, Braun Strowman, Braun Strowman hates Pasty Man. They have a fight, Strowman wins, Braun Strowman. Up next, Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey have a bit of a chat in the ring, and good lord, what did they do with Ronda Rousey's eye makeup before she went out? That looked horrific. Anyway, Ronda says she's getting more comfortable on the mic, you can kind of tell here. She calls Stephanie personal trainer tough and trust fund tough, and she's going to rip Stephanie's arm out of her socket. Speaking of bad makeup, out comes Paige and the rest of Absolution. Paige offers Ronda a spot as the 4th member of Absolution, but Ronda firmly rejects the offer. Paige sicks Mandy and Sonya onto Ronda, and she disposes of the two of them single-handedly, albeit a little bit sloppy. There's a point where she's trying to toss one into the other, but there's a bit of just coordination issue that doesn't quite make it look as good as it should. But then Ronda does a very pretty judo flip onto Mandy Rose, puts her right in the arm bar, and Angle talks her down from actually breaking Mandy's arm. So it ended on a very positive note, very strong note for Ronda here. I think I would hope that that Ronda and Kurt and Triple H and Stephanie do a lot of rehearsal work before this match to make Ronda's interactions with Stephanie look as smooth as possible, because I think this does have the potential to not be a very aesthetically pleasing match, especially between the two women in that match, but I think it could go either way. It could be either great or it could look horrifying. Well, this week on the Hulu version of Raw, the main event of the show was the actual main event. It's John Cena versus Kane in a no disqualification match. Kane fighting kind of on behalf of The Undertaker, even though it's never explicitly said by Kane here. Big fight all over the place, out into the crowd, out into the tech area, going through the barricade, tables, and more. Cena stealing a lot of Taker's signature moves, like the sit-up, he does the throat cut, the choke slam and everything, to really get at Undertaker's goat, so to speak. He defeats Kane by putting him through a table with the attitude adjustment to win the match. He goes on the microphone and says, no bells of terror, no lights, you gotta do something, Taker. I'm giving you one more week to respond, to say yes or no. Then as the show goes off the air, you see him do the throat thrust again, roll his eyes up the back of his head as best as he can. That's how the show ends. Also, before I forget, very interesting little nugget of commentary by the coach in the middle of this match where he says, if The Undertaker does come back, what version could we see? Like, that kind of verbiage to me makes it really kind of like an obvious or kind of a telegraph thing that there's the rumor going out that Undertaker might come back as the American Badass version of himself to fight Cena at WrestleMania. I don't know how much of that it's like rumor and how much of that is just fanboy gossip and speculation, but the fact that Coach said on commentary, what version of him will we see, when it's never really come up before, makes me think that's kind of like what they're going toward. Well, before I move on to SmackDown, speaking of WrestleMania, 1 week from tomorrow at the Joy Theater in New Orleans, Inside the Ropes presents An Evening with Paul Heyman. It's Inside the Ropes' first US-based event. It's a live, one-of-a-kind speaking engagement with the advocate of the Universal Champion, Brock Lesnar. Now, the last time Inside the Ropes hosted a Paul Heyman event in Glasgow, he famously posited the theory that Brock beating The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30 was a shoot, and he also offered Will Ospreay an Evolve contract live on stage in front of everybody. So what kind of wild stuff are we going to see this time around? You have to be there to find out. Heyman's going to be telling stories of his career across WCW, ECW, and WWE, and of course there's going to be exclusive meet and greets before and after the show with the fans. For tickets and info, visit the link at the top of the description in this video. So the opening match that's advertised on SmackDown is Bobby Roode and Randy Orton versus Jinder Mahal and Sunil Singh. But as a result of last week's beatdown, Sunil's wearing a neck brace and his arm is in a sling. He can't compete, so in his place is Rusev. It's Rusev Day to open up SmackDown here. Good to see the old tag team back together again. Good work by Roode, taking the brunt of the offense from the heels in this matchup. Orton tags himself in at the end. Roode gets knocked into Orton by Jinder Mahal, and then Orton takes that. He misinterprets that. He thinks Roode just kind of bumped into him intentionally. Hits Roode with the RKO, but then he eats a Machka kick by Rusev, and then Rusev wins. He beats the U.S. champion in the middle of the ring. He finally picks up a win after several weeks of losing, so that was kind of a big moment there. And now it's been announced he's going to be inserted into the U.S. title match at Mania, making it a fatal four-way. First of all, great that they aren't doing just a direct copy of the Intercontinental Championship match on Raw, and now this U.S. title match is 100% more interesting to me than it was a week ago. Up next, Becky Lynch taking on Ruby Riott. A very solid match here, and I really enjoyed the finish where Ruby goes for a dirty pin with her feet on the ropes, but the referee catches it. Becky goes for the disarm her, but Ruby rolls into a pinning combination out of it. Kick out Becky with a pinning combination of her own to win the match, and then she tosses out Logan and Morgan as they get in the ring. She tosses them out over the top rope style, and it's just one of those symbolic, like, if she does this at WrestleMania, she's gonna win the uterus trophy. GM Daniel Bryan gets on stage and confirms what we all pretty much knew as a result of watching the end of last week's SmackDown. He announces a tag match between himself and Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn at WrestleMania, where if Kevin and Sami win, they're reinstated, but if they lose, they remain fired. Very interesting they're going through with announcing Shane in this match since he was legitimately hospitalized this week with diverticulitis. So it's going to be, will he be good to go in time for Mania? It seems to me that kind of condition seems like something, you can't really take lightly. So I'm sure we're all going to be watching that situation very closely in the days to come with so little time between now and WrestleMania. Then Daniel, after the announcement, cuts this great promo. He takes off the blazer, or whatever the hell that thing is, as he said. He's ready to wrestle again and kick Sami and Kevin's ass. I loved that promo. The second half of that segment, which is very strong. I loved it. The New Day takes on the Bludgeon Brothers, and Xavier is practically mummified, having so much impact tape on his back as a result of the beatdown at Fastlane. Before the match can really get anywhere, Rowan grabs his very light-looking mouth from the outside to do some damage. Out come the Usos to break everything up. Match ends in a DQ. The New Day and the Usos have a bit of a face-off in the ring, but they're chased out of the ring by the Bludgeon Bros. And so now it's been announced it's going to be a triple threat tag team match at WrestleMania for the SmackDown tag titles, which just seemed to be kind of the direction they were going after the last couple of weeks. And I'm very curious to see where they go with this, because we all know what, the New Day and the Usos can do. But putting the Bludgeon Brothers in this kind of match is kind of the wild card, because we know that especially Harper, I think, is really one of the more underutilized talents in the whole roster. And so Rowan's kind of touch and go, depends on who he's with, I feel. So I'm very curious to see how the Bludgeon Brothers will affect the New Day Uso gumbo we've become so accustomed to the last couple of years. Up next is your reminder that the Andre the Giant Battle Royal is happening at WrestleMania as Tyler Breeze takes on Dolph Ziggler. Boy, it's hard to believe that just a few weeks ago Dolph Ziggler was in the main event of a SmackDown pay-per-view for the WWE Championship. Boy, how times have changed. Anyway, highlight of the match is Fandango running laps around the ring a couple of times. That was pretty amusing. Ziggler wins with the zigzag. Main event of the evening is Shinsuke Nakamura with AJ Styles in his corner, taking on Shelton Benjamin with Chad Gable in his corner. This is a pretty solid match between these two. On paper, I would love to see these two have a proper 15-minute match where they could really go balls to the wall. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite like that. It was still very good, though. Gable tries to interfere early on, but AJ dumps him on the apron, and Gable just doesn't retaliate. He just kind of sits there and sells. I wonder why he doesn't chase after Styles. Maybe because Styles is still kind of hurt? Anyway, the match ends when Shinsuke wins with the Kinshasa. Very solid match. After the match, Shinsuke tells Styles he only brought him out to ringside so he could see how he was going to beat Styles at Mania. A very passionate promo by AJ afterward where he says, this dream match is a dream for him because he wants to prove he's better than the best and beat Shinsuke and retain the championship. And then Shinsuke just gets down to his level. He looks down at him like he's a child, bending down and looking at him that way, which to me is so powerful of a visual. And he says that AJ is too emotional, and that's why Shinsuke is going to win at WrestleMania. A very powerful moment, in my opinion. As Shinsuke leaves, Invengibles comes back and beats up AJ Styles. Shinsuke picks them off and gets them out of the ring. He teases a Kinshasa on AJ, but he pulls his punch. He stops just before hitting him, and he does a little kind of mocks him, knee to the face, pats him on the head, and walks off. That's how the show ends. Very, very strong ending, in my opinion, but the best build I've seen so far for the AJ Shinsuke match thus far. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. And as a reminder, since I watched the Hulu versions of both shows this week, and since the Hulu version of SmackDown is pretty much unchanged, and the Hulu version of Raw is so chopped up to hell, it's not really fair to pick a clear-cut winner this week, so no points will be allocated. But to me, the unofficial winner of this week is SmackDown. I think it was just an overall more solid show. I felt that Raw was very average in terms of storyline progression and in-ring action, which is terrifying considering that usually the Hulu version of Raw is better. So I was bored watching this 90-minute version of Raw for the most part, not really interested or engaged or invested in what was going on, where SmackDown had so much more going on to me, like Daniel Bryan's great promo, the opening tag match was really cool, seeing Rusev being added to the US title match at Mania made me very happy, and then the stuff at the end with Shinsuke and AJ. Again, great way to build that stuff. I'm very curious to see how they're going to go forward on the go-home week. I don't know where you can really go from here that makes it any more, to me, emotionally interesting, but I am very curious now to see what they do next week on SmackDown. Let me know what you guys thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comment section below, and be sure to vote which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, and check out Patreon.com/WrestlingWithRegret for exclusive perks and bonus content. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.